let's look and see how the human body is organized and some of the various body systems that we'll be talking about this semester. All right, so let's start big, all right, with an organism. It could be we could be talking about a cat or a dinosaur, whatever. But the whole organism is going to contain 11 different body systems. When we're looking at vertebrates, that's what we've got, 11 body systems, or organ systems. Organ systems contain organs. However, the organs are going to be connected in some way, shape, or form to cooperate for a common purpose, something rather large. If you think about the digestive system, it's really all going to be about extracting energy and nutrients from external food sources, for example. Everything is built around that specific purpose. However, there are a lot of different organs in that system. All right? The organs are structures containing multiple tissues that can carry out complex functions. They're pretty specialized. All right? So going back to the digestive system, you can think about the stomach as an organ, and the stomach is going to do tasks such as liquefy the food using a combination of hydrochloric acid and enzymes. All right? And it's really going to take whatever you chewed up and make sure it's liquefied, burn away microorganisms with the acid, things like that. It will then eventually move that food material into the small intestine, which is going to be principally concerned with more digestion, breaking down to very, very small molecules, and the big thing is actually absorbing those nutrients and putting them into the bloodstream. So they will have different functions, but of course they're needed to work together for the overall process of digestion. Now, saying organs contain multiple tissue types, what is a tissue? It's a Kleenex. God bless you. Okay, now, tissues, of course, are groups of similar cells that serve a common purpose. And tissues are going to be looked at in lab. The study of tissues is called histology. And we'll get into epithelial tissue, connective tissues, muscular tissue, nervous tissue in really more detail than you're probably going to want. But when you look at a tissue, most of the time you'll only have one cell type in that tissue. Sometimes you'll have a few different cells within a tissue. Oftentimes tissues are organized into sheets that are layered upon one another to make the organ. Sometimes the tissues are in, or the cells of a tissue are in like a cluster to make kind of a different type of structure. But as long as you've got multiple tissue types, making something more complex, you've got an organ. And thus, I take kind of a liberal view of what may count as an organ, not just big things like your brain and heart and kidney, but even an individual blood vessel is made of multiple types of tissue, epithelial tissues and connective tissue and muscular tissue, and it's going to have physiology to it in terms of changing its diameter to alter flow patterns of the blood or to change the blood pressure. So something like that to me counts as an organ. An individual muscle, like the pectoralis major, actually is muscle tissue and connective tissue. To me, that counts as an organ. All right, things like that. So tissues, as I said, we'll look at these quite a lot in lab. We will also, though, look at cells, because cells are the basic unit of life. Cells contain millions and millions of molecules. They're complex little things in and of themselves. There's some organizational structures really between cells and atoms. Atoms are the smallest particles of matter. They combine to make molecules. Some molecules, like water, are very small. Some of them are made of hundreds and thousands and millions of atoms, and you get something like DNA, which is incredibly complex, really, in its structure. Then sometimes you'll take relatively complex molecules and build larger complexes, big protein complexes, that may actually turn into what are called organelles within a cell. Organelles are little structures in the cell that perform their own unique bit of physiology. They're sort of the cell's organs, if you will. Right? So we're going to look at all of these things. Okay? And starting at the low level here, we're going to build up. The heart was the example for looking at anatomy and physiology in general, so we'll stick with that. All right, you could take your individual atoms, and we're just seeing individual atoms here bonded together, but they're going to make these different proteins. And actually, this is many proteins here. Each of these spheres is a protein. This kind of green thread is made of two different proteins wrapped around one another. So they're going to be very complicated, and this is actually just a zoomed in version of what here is this red thread. These big protein filaments are going to be found inside of muscle cells. So this is a muscle cell, and specifically this is a cardiac muscle cell based on its shape, the way that the ends of it are going to have this kind of in and out interdigitation here. And when we take several of these together, we get cardiac muscle tissue. The branching pattern, how they connect, is unique among the muscles, as we will learn. And that's when we know this is definitely cardiac muscle tissue and not anything else. Cardiac muscle tissue, as the name suggests, is only found in the heart. All right? The heart puts the cardio in cardiovascular system. Like, literally it does, right? Cardio for heart, vascular for blood vessels. Together with the blood, which itself is actually a very specialized connective tissue, that's the cardiovascular system. The heart pumps. It's going to generate pressure to keep the blood flowing. The blood vessels are going to direct blood to various organs and return it back to the heart and keep the blood circulating. This, though, is just one of the 11 body systems making the organism as a whole. What are the other ones? Well, here they are. Tegumentary system, skeletal system, muscular system, nervous system, the endocrine system, the lymphatic system, respiratory system, digestive system, urinary system, and reproductive system. All right, skipped over cardiovascular because that's what we were talking about. And here is a chart just kind of showing major functions, and you can read this through. And the next 11 slides, the remainder of this presentation here, are just individual descriptions as to what organs are found in each system and what are the big jobs. I'm going to do this the super fast version here. All right, so the integumentary system is your outer covering, your skin, hair, nails, some of the glands that are built into your skin. We'll talk about all that too. Mostly it's separating your inside from your outside and protecting your inside from all sorts of damaging things of the external environment, whether that be abrasion, chemicals, bacteria, just drying out, things like that. We're going to have sensors in it, different nervous structures. It'll help regulate body temperature. There's a small waste elimination component as well, your sweat glands. Skeletal system, of course, bones is the big thing. We'll look at the way the joints are going to be where two bones come together. A lot of cartilages are going to be part of the skeletal system as well. The bones are going to make a big framework for the body, just overall structure. Small protective aspects, but very important for things like the skull protecting the brain. We're going to store minerals in the bones, very important for calcium homeostasis. Within the bones is where blood cells are going to be produced. And actually, the way that the joints connect to one another does have a lot of implications for movement, as you may have seen from the last video. But of course, if we say movement, we're talking about muscle. When we say the muscular system, we're really talking about the skeletal muscles, things that are going to largely attach to the skeleton and move the skeleton around, generating force and causing movement. Some of them are going to also have a supportive structure, say in the abdomen and the pelvis, guarding some of the outer openings, like around the mouth and such. Right? That's going to be the muscular system. The nervous system is the major controlling system of the body. It will consist of the brain and the spinal cord, and all the nerves that come from the brain and the spinal cord, including all the receptors. Now, we could really actually throw in some eyeballs on this guy and such too, because the eyes are going to be very specialized receptors, and with the ears and going into things with the nose and the tongue and such. We will have a whole different unit on senses following the nervous system, but detecting stimuli is the first job of the nervous system, to actually pick up changes in the external environment or the internal environment and send them to a place for information processing. That's usually going to be the brain. Sometimes just in the spinal cord, but usually in the brain. To get this information, process it, and make a decision as to how to react about it. And then the last part is that reaction, sending motor command signals away from the central nervous system to things like the skeletal muscles and various glands, and cause a response to occur. So sensory input coming in, decision making as to what to do about it, and sending a motor command in order to actually cause a response. That is what the nervous system is all about. It is the primary controlling system, but not the only one. The endocrine system, as we see here, is the secondary controlling system of the body. There are a lot of different glands, all right, including some that are located in the brain. The hypothalamus is a brain region, and attached to that is the pituitary gland. The pineal gland is nearby as well. We'll also see in the neck the thyroid gland and parathyroid glands. In the abdominopelvic cavity, the pancreas and the adrenal glands. And the gonads technically are endocrine organs as well. All right? The job of the endocrine system is control of the body, but a different way than the nervous system. These glands are going to make products called hormones that enter the bloodstream. And it's only through the bloodstream that they'll actually be able to get to their targets. Because control through hormones takes some time to ramp up, but it will last a longer time because basically the hormones circulate and it takes time for them to be removed. We're going to see long-term continuous processes like growth, metabolism, and reproduction handled by the endocrine system. So when we talk about this system, that's largely what we're going to be looking at overall. The cardiovascular system was our big example. We've got the heart and the blood vessels. We'll talk about blood as well. But this is a big pumping system for blood. Blood is going to be the transport medium of the body. So we're going to do things like deliver oxygen and nutrients to basically all the cells of the body and take away carbon dioxide and waste products, take them away from the cells, and eventually deliver them to the places where we can get rid of them. Take carbon dioxide, we'll get rid of that at the lungs and pick up oxygen while we're there. Waste products will be eliminated in the kidneys. All right. We'll transport all sorts of things, though, as we'll see. The lymphatic system. Now, this is a weird one, all right? You're probably aware, okay, the word lymphatic, you're like, yeah, lymph nodes are a thing. But what else is in here? What's really going on? All right. Well, the lymph nodes are found along lymphatic pathways, these lymphatic vessels that run parallel to your main blood vessels, but they're not nearly as prominent, this kind of thin-walled one-way system. This is a system, actually, for returning fluid that is lost in the bloodstream. It kind of goes in between your cells, just kind of a sort of a nowhere space between your cells. But take any buildup of fluid there and get it back into the bloodstream so that your blood pressure doesn't completely plummet. Right? Along the way, though, this fluid is going to be filtered for debris, and that's what the lymph nodes are all about. The lymph nodes and other things that are made of lymphatic tissue, including the spleen, the thymus has kind of a complex job, lymphatic tissue that is found in, say, your tonsils and places like that. The other job is to house immune cells. So there's a very strong connection to your body's immune processes, but keep in mind that the quote-unquote immune system is not a thing if we're talking about like organ systems. This is the closest bit. This is the one that's really strongly connected to immunity, but as we'll see, we'll talk about immunity in a few other contexts as well. The respiratory system, including all the nasal passageways, the airway down through the larynx and trachea and the bronchi into the lungs. We'll look at the diaphragm, which is going to be powering the process. Think about breathing, but it's actually going to be more than that. What breathing does is it moves air into the lungs and out. While in the lungs, we will exchange gases where oxygen will enter the bloodstream and extra carbon dioxide in the blood will enter the airspace and can be exhaled and gotten rid of. All right. We'll also look at the process of oxygen and carbon dioxide transport in the blood and then what happens when we reach cells to give the cells the oxygen and pick up extra carbon dioxide. In addition to all the sound production, like I'm doing right now in the larynx, the respiratory system plays a big role in making sure that your blood pH stays steady. And the real short form of that is that the more carbon dioxide that is dissolved in a watery solution, like you have in blood, the more acidic that solution gets. And so one big way to control the pH is to control the carbon dioxide levels. And how do we do that? Well, you can either breathe out more carbon dioxide or breathe out less carbon dioxide, depending on the respiratory rate. The digestive system starts in the mouth. You'll also find things like teeth and salivary glands nearby, moving down through the pharynx, which is the back of the throat, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine. We'll see the liver and gallbladder and pancreas. Note the pancreas was an endocrine organ, but here it's a digestive organ as well. As a digestive organ, is going to produce a lot of enzymes and deposit those into the small intestine. Digestion is talking about breakdown. The word digestion is about the breakdown, both mechanical and chemical breakdown of food, so that we can absorb nutrients for energy or to use as our own building blocks. You want to build proteins? Well, you eat protein and break it down into individual little bits we call amino acids. Absorb those amino acids, and now you've got building blocks to make your own. And that's how it works. We'll absorb those nutrients. Anything left over, we will eliminate. The urinary system only has a few organs in it, the kidneys, and then these tubes here called the ureters that lead to the urinary bladder, and then the urethra, which is the passageway out. The ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra are just moving the urine, storing it, and then eliminating it out. The kidneys, however, they make urine, sure. That is not all they do. That's just the byproduct. The kidneys are, in fact, some of the most complex organs we will look at. Their job is to initially make a filtrate of blood, and then reabsorb all the stuff that we want to keep, leaving behind waste products. Essentially, they're big blood cleaners, helping to get rid of metabolic waste, as well as extra ions or extra water, which is a thing that can happen. All right, excessive water in the body, we'll get rid of it. And in that way, they're regulating what your blood really is composed of, the composition of the blood and the volume of the blood. All right, serving this big process overall. Of course, looking at the elimination of metabolic waste is a big part of that. That is why urine is yellow and stinky, because of all this metabolic waste getting gotten rid of. And finally, the reproductive system. Now, let me throw out a couple of caveats here with the reproductive system. Number one, we are going to use a binary sex definition here, looking at male and female. I will 100% acknowledge that there are intersex variations that can occur due to chromosomal differences, genetic differences, just hormonal differences that can occur. But we're going to use this because it's going to explain the vast majority of cases that someone may encounter. The other thing is that when we talk about the reproductive system, my general focus is going to be, okay, we're going to attempt a fertilization event. Because if you think about the overall function, all right, yes, creating new individuals. All right, so because of that, the perspective that is going to be taken will be heterosexual vaginal intercourse, but that is simply because that is how a new individual would be created. There's no statement behind that whatsoever. So I want to explain why we're going to talk about it like that in terms of human behavior, whatever. Anyway, so we're going to take that perspective, looking at the male organs, the testes, scrotum, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, the penis. Female organs, including the ovaries, uterine tubes, uterus, the vagina, the vulva, which is the collective term for the external genitalia, and we'll actually go out of the pelvis into the breast for the mammary glands. The function of the reproductive system in males, creating the gametes, the spermatozoa, supporting fluid, which we call semen, and then delivering into the female reproductive tract. The female reproductive tract will be the site of fertilization, as the ovum will be produced, the gamete there, the female gamete. Fertilization, the combination of those gametes, and then the uterus will serve as the site of gestation, the 9 months of development. You'll even then see postnatal developmental support, and that's where the mammary gland comes into play to deliver that nutrition even after birth. All right, so that will do it for the organ systems.